Okay, I know it's early. Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 2025. This is planned to begin a long time ago, but wasn't permitted, so hopefully it's glitch free. I'm going to try to keep it simple. In fact, let's just strip this down and just put the bare minimum on the screen right now. I don't want to risk anything here. We've had a lot of glitches over the last year, and it's just been kind of an uphill battle, but we're just about, I think, to the point where I can maintain a steady morning deprogram and evening open phones. So the purpose of the IPS Morning Deprogram is to set the stage for what we're going to talk about later, and this is the time when I'll generally be publishing the press release for the day. And right now I have it automated. I've been working with a lot of automations, AI agents, just seeing what I can integrate into my workflow. So, we're not even in our final form. It's been a work in progress, but it has been a pretty steady progress all around. Now, I want to start off today with this clip from an individual who worked in security for like 15 years, and he proffered some very interesting comments regarding the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania last July. So let me play some of this clip here and see what you think, because you'll see by the end what my point here is. But let's just go and listen to what an objective, neutral observer had to say.
You know how I know it was staged? Because during an act...
Okay, so let me make sure the volume's up. He says, "You know how I know it was staged," is how it begins.
You know how I know it was staged? Because during an active, attempt, you do not stand him upright and for a photo op. You keep him on the ground and you escort out, blocking the body as a shield. I've worked in security for approximately...
Now, what he's saying is that, yeah, it's completely against the standard protocol for any kind of security detail to take the target of an attempted assassination and prop them up, making them into a bigger target, because you wouldn't know for sure that there wasn't a second shooter or a third. I think he even said there could be 10. And he makes a great point. And this point here reminds me of something that I mention whenever we look at these mass shootings. I'm asking the question every time, wait a minute here. A bunch of people just got blasted and the news media is reporting on it. How do they know there was only one shooter? And oftentimes there are questions. People say, I thought I heard a second shooter. So what makes the media feel safe? What makes the scene secure enough to go report on it if it's still a manhunt for the shooter? You see, that's kind of how I sometimes just arrive at the conclusion early, or a likelihood that, hey, this is probably fake, because there's no way this is a secure, safe site. And so similarly, there's no way they could have known that the shooter on the roof was the only shooter.
4 years at Cuvée and Enclave, two very large nightclubs in Chicago. You do not stand him up when they don't know how many possible attackers there are. There could be 2, there could be 10, they don't know. Why would you stand him up and subject him to possible more attacks? Number 2, he had a brief stint at WWE.
Okay, he brings up that Donald Trump, is a Hall of Famer, World Wrestling Entertainment. He brings up the technique of blading, where wrestlers wear a little razor blade on their person beneath a piece of tape, and then they give themselves little cuts on their head, which mixes with their sweat and then they have, their whole face now is red from blood dripping down it. And he mentioned this blading technique, and we talked about this when Hulk Hogan spoke at the RNC. And I'm wondering, how did he get that gig? Did he say, "Hey guys, I know how you did it. If you don't let me speak, I'm going to blow the whistle"? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like Hulk Hogan knew something, because he goes up on stage and he says, "This reminds me," and he's BSing. He's like, "This just occurred to me, but I remember looking up." This is again Hulk Hogan talking about watching Donald Trump on TV with the bloody face. He says, "I'm looking at Donald Trump on the screen with his face bloody, with his fist raised, and it reminds me of me during Hulkamania, face bloody, looking down at Donald Trump before I went on to win the victory." And I thought, okay, that's a very peculiar thing to say. And then at that time, Donald Trump had blown him a kiss. And I just thought, okay, this is very curious. Almost like from one Hall of Famer to the other. All right, let me go ahead and play some more on this clip here, and then we'll get to the final point.
And in WWE, he learned how to use a blade to initiate red stuff. You know what I'm talking about. So anybody who follows WWE, they know that they usually hide a razor on their wrist. They tape it to their wrist. And then when there's a moment when they're not looking, they'll take the razor and they'll just nick their forehead or their ear. There's a vein in your ear right here. If you nick it with the razor, it's going to bleed a lot. So when he was on the ground, I believe that he nicked his ear with the razor. Now you may say, well, what about the person who ended up getting hit behind him?
If you go back and you look at the footage, it does look like he picks something off the podium and then swipes it against the side of his head. It does look like he bladed himself. I think his body language says, "I just cut myself."
I believe that his team found a degenerate kid and instructed him on what to do.
Okay, now this is the part here that I want to get to, because his discernment is right. The shooting was fake, but he's in the box. This is why I say the opinions of people in the MSM box don't matter. The opinions of people in MSM Plus, the subset of the mainstream brainwashing, their opinions don't matter. Their observations might be astute, but their context is wrong. So this individual understands that Trump's assassination attempt was staged, but because he's in the mainstream mediation, he cannot separate this from anything else. He cannot look at the bigger picture. So what he's looking at is, okay, this is Trump staged it, but this also means that they had some guy killed and that the shooter, so he thinks the shooting was real, but that the shooter was told not to shoot at Trump. Does that make sense? Let's hire somebody to pretend to shoot at the president. That doesn't make any sense. And then they kill him. And so he can't even reach this or fathom the notion that the entire thing was a production, that the shooter was fake, the shooting was fake. But no, he's mixing it, real and fake. And this is confusion. The definition of confusion right here. He's conflating real with fake. So this was fake, but this was real. And he can't reconcile it. And what I'm pointing out here is that his opinion on the matter is invalidated because he's got the wrong context. He's confused. I'm not confused. If you're mainstream mediated, you're confused by default. You're misinformed by default. You're programmed by default. The process of breaking free of misinformation is becoming informed. And becoming informed in this context means understanding the scale of fakeability, the scope of it, and the purpose of it. And that will always elude mainstreamers. So again, this mainstreamer recognizes that the Trump assassination attempt was fake, but he still thinks there's a dead shooter. Listen to his explanation for it. And again, this is his best attempt to reconcile his confusion.
I believe that his team found a degenerate kid and instructed him on what to do, but to intentionally miss.
Now, let me point out one more thing. like Ryan Roush, the shooter Thomas Crooks was also in a BlackRock commercial. Like that's a huge connection there that's worth mentioning. But assuming that this guy's right, he's suggesting that they found some degenerate and said, "Hey, we're going to use this degenerate to fire at the president and miss on purpose, but get really close." Like, you see how insane this sounds. And then let's add on to it, because this guy's not thinking. This is what I'm saying. He's in the box. How do you explain the AP photographer getting the photograph of the bullet whizzing by Trump's ear at that exact moment? How do you explain that? I mean, the whole thing is obviously a production, but you see how limited it is. The shooting was fake, but everything else was real. This is, again, a normie take on it.
However, this degenerate kid had no experience using a you-know-what, and he accidentally hit the person behind him.
Okay, so if you want to, let's just wrap this up. So his take on it is this. The Trump assassination attempt was fake, but the shooter was real, but he was some disposable degenerate that the Trump administration hired to do it so they could get rid of him after. So he's a patsy. And that he was instructed to shoot at Trump and miss, but he was such a bad shot that he accidentally killed the fireman. That's a conspiracy theory. I'm not pro-offering conspiracy theories. I'm just pointing out reasons to doubt what we're being told. And what he's doing, this is called MSM+. This is very instructive, because when somebody who's in the mainstream box can't explain something, instead of questioning the premise, what do? They add on to it. And that's called conspiracy theory, MSM+. And conspiracy theorists do this all the time. They say, oh, there's no way this happened this way. There had to have been a second shooter. George Soros was in the tower. There's always these, like the water tower shooter, the second shooter stuff. You'll see this as a pattern. But again, as you can see here, we're just looking at the normie trying to explain what cannot be explained without filling it in with conjecture. All right, let's continue. Let's see who's in the chat. What's up, Marcus, Till, Tony Driscoll, Lean Dion, Jennifer Reeves, Paradoxy, Moronics. John says, "Why you hide?" Look, I'm actually only on YouTube right now. We're kind of stripped down. I'm a little behind on things because I've been investing my time in other projects. So at the moment, we don't have the full setup, but I think I might have it up in a couple of days. I've been working on a lot of side projects, things that have I think the long-term goals of the IPS prioritized. There's a lot of room here for expansion. This can scale up, because what are we really doing here? We're not conspiracy theorists. We're not mainstream news. We're not trying to wake people up. We're not activists. We're not QAnons fighting the deep state. So where do we fit? Well, I believe, and I've experienced rather, and I know that there is a huge gap in the marketplace where there's a lot of people who think deeply and who aren't entangled, who aren't manipulated, but who have a more philosophical approach to things. And that's kind of where we fit in. It's not hate speech, but it's media analysis, propaganda analysis, but it covers a lot of ground. We cover a lot of territory here because there's no meaningful distinction to be made between the information propaganda you get from the news and the entertainment propaganda you get everywhere else. And looking at the synchronization of it reveals quite a lot about how the world works, about how people work. I mean, we're looking at this individual on the screen, this former security guard, and you can see when I'm talking about people being programmed, this is a perfect example of it. He is programmed by his frame of reference. Everything he interprets goes through this frame. His frame tells him what's on the screen is real until proven fake. And the Trump thing is easy to prove fake, but you can't really debunk the other stuff. You just take it on faith. Well, they reported the shooter's dead, so he's dead. So how do I explain that? This is like false flag theory. False flaggers, they believe that there's a conspiracy, but people really died. Well, as long as you operate under the presumption that people died, you're going to arrive at these conspiracy theories that are the byproduct of confusion and these sad attempts to reconcile that confusion. And again, I'm not confused. And when I hear people express confusion, I don't feel sorry for them, but I'm just like, why? Like, well, I don't know. Maybe somebody died. Maybe they didn't. Okay, well, how are you processing that information? If you're passively receiving propaganda, pre-masticated by the government, Big Brother just spits it directly into your mouth like mama bird feeding a baby bird, then yeah, of course, you don't have the tools to parse the information. You're kind of at the mercy of your source. But I am my own source. Nobody's putting their beak in my mouth. Nobody's spoon feeding me. And if something doesn't add up, I'm not obliged to claim to believe it. I don't proclaim, I believe this headline. I stand on this headline. No, I need more information. Like, for example, the Austin Metcalf stabbing. I purposefully said I'm waiting a few days. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that somebody kills somebody over something stupid. It happens all the time. But this one seems to have a specific political utility. And then I see it's being agitated. And then I find out that the agitator was a January 6er. And then you throw into it the general media ecosystem, including that movie Sinners and the theme and the overlapping narratives with the twins, the twin dying in the other twin's arm, the mass shooting of the Klansmen. It's all adding up. We talked about that in the context of Tucker Carlson, alien attack survivor, talking to Alex Jones. And Carlson predicted that there's going to be a, quote, false flag where some BLM person is going to shoot up the Patriot Front. So I'm looking at this, and now the other thing that also relates to this is we're looking at the Shiloh Hendricks thing. And let's go ahead and just get into that, because we're kind of looking at the general media landscape here. I want to stay focused on, here we go, what's happening right now and how it all is tying in like we said it would. Media in the news, all these fake events following what's in the entertainment. And that's a huge indicator. If there's any suggestion of a hoax, then you got to take the body count down to 0. If there's political utility and it's got known provocateurs attached to it, it's probably a hoax. And this one really surprised me that it even got this big, GoFundMe. So the GoFundMes have been part of building up this psychological warfare, this race war narrative. The GoFundMe accounts have been doing this for some time. Look what they did with Daniel Penny, where they made Daniel Penny the highest earning recipient of donations on their platform. And he was the guy who killed a mentally ill person on a subway. So they turned him into a hero for the right and a villain to the left. And Daniel Penny, of course, was released as Luigi went into jail. They crossed paths. Luigi's going in, Daniel Penny's going out. They passed each other. This was intentional. And this is because one side's vigilante is the other side's hero. Well, here you have another mirror. And we've been talking about twins and mirrors and pairs and the duality. This is a repeated theme here. Just like on Easter, the Pope steps down just the same time as Klaus Schwab steps down. They're both 88. Same archetype, World Economic Forum, the Vatican. Like, what's the common thing here that I'm seeing here is a lot of this twinning. And twins have been a huge, for some reason, the concept of twins, the double, has been a huge part of all these psyops. Twin Towers, Twin Cities, George Floyd. And this all, I think, refers to the duality, the twin pillars, the Hegelian dialectic, the black and white. And they play it out in these race war scenarios. So here you've got Shiloh Hendricks, whose name has some significance to the Civil War and one of the first capital cities of Israel. Fascinating connections, but she has been put in the same conversation as Anthony Carmelo. Like, these are two separate incidents. Anthony Carmelo is alleging that it was self-defense, but he killed somebody. And we have to, if we go by presumption of innocence, it was self-defense. He felt threatened. If we go by what everyone else is saying and what it looks like, he went over there looking for trouble. So that whole case has been polarizing. Yet, the people on the political left have overwhelmingly sided with the killer, a rather alleged killer. Now, I'm saying these things are fake. I don't even believe it's real for a lot of reasons. The fact is, I don't believe that life really imitates the movies. It's the propaganda saturation synchronizes things, and it looks like that. But no, this is all, again, theater. So we have this individual, Carmelo raises $520K so he can be safe and hide from all of the right-wingers who are now against him. And then next thing you know, we've got Shiloh Hendricks. And she's in the park, and some child reaches into the diaper bag, and she uses a racial slur. And someone calls her out on it, makes her go viral to punish her. And she puts up a GoFundMe because her life is now being threatened, because now she's been doxxed and made viral over her racial slur against a child. And she uses GoFundMe to get protection, and the right wing sides with her. And it's just tribalism, of course. But now they're both at, well, she's at 600,000. But here at this point in time, GoFundMe or Give, Send, Go, whatever, had come out and they had said, we're blocking the comments because they're so vitriolic. Well, they let the comments go for a long time. And if you look at the thread of comments, it was all dog whistles. It was all 4chan level, racial stuff, but they let it go on both sides. And I'm looking at it, and they both reached 520K. So I'm like, $1 million have been raised on both of these accounts. And people are calling this on Twitter, some people refer to this as like a proxy race war. Again, it's a engineered psychological operation, and it's not over yet. And I've been watching on Twitter people responding to it, and it's one of the most polarizing juxtaposition of stories I've ever seen. Like these two stories, the Shiloh Hendricks and Anthony Carmelo, are obviously timed to go along with the summer and whatever's planned next. And they really did try to make this Anthony Metcalf into some kind of a martyr. And that is why now you're even having right-wingers calling out some of these people as alt-woke. For some time I've been saying that woke on the left is paralleled with the right-wing extremist, well, not extremist, but the far fringe right conspiracy where it delves into identity politics. That's basically what I call alt-woke. And now I'm seeing the term alt-woke is mainstream in the media ecosystem now. Till says, Trump just pulled out of the Russia-Ukraine peace talks after Ukraine signed over mineral rights. Russia will claim those minerals. U.S. will send in troops. World War III this summer. Possibly. Yeah, the Shiloh Civil War connection is pretty good. World War III, Civil War. Which is it going to be? It's always like, oh, it's going to be a Civil War. No, it's going to be World War III. Which one comes first? And I noticed that Civil War gets really hyped up, and then that dies down, and then it's World War III gets hyped up, and that dies down. And none of it ever really happens. And have you seen the fallout that Trump has received for posting the image of himself as the Pope? I mean, I didn't even think about this, but real Catholics might actually be offended because they're still crying because the Pope died. And they're still waiting to see who the next Pope's going to be, because the Pope is the vicar of Christ. It's basically God. And God's rep is out at the moment. And at this time, Trump decides to tweet or post a picture of himself in the Pope. So Donald Trump as Pope has gone viral. And Karl Rove is pretty mad about it. And Trump called Rove a liar. Karl Rove, I haven't heard from him in a bit. Last time I saw him, we discussed him, we were talking about the blackmail circle in conservative politics, where Ollie Alexander is grooming young conservative, like high schoolers, and then bringing them into the fold. And he's, and Nick Fuentes knew about this. And of course, at the time, Ollie Alexander was dating Karl Rove. I mean, there's a pair. But anyway, Trump called Rove a total loser. And speaking of Nick Fuentes, I just watched Spike Lee's Black Klansman the other day. And what they did is clever. They made David Duke a younger David Duke, because the movie's set back in the late 60s, I think. I have to double check that. Might be 70s, but they made David Duke look and sound like Nick Fuentes, only he had this really thick mustache. So this mustached David Duke sounds just like Nick Fuentes. And at their Klans meeting, they're all chanting, America first, America first. Well, now fast forward, that movie was out 5 years ago, 2025. Nick Fuentes has grown out his mustache, and he's the America first guy. So he's been made into David Duke, conflated in the Spike Lee production. And I never heard him complain about this. If Spike Lee made a movie to demonize me, I would say something. And I'm just pointing this out because I've noticed that a lot of these obvious provocateurs and crisis actors who are active in the big psyops, and Nick Fuentes was part of the Charleston psyop. The white replacement theory started with that. They will not replace us. I just think these individuals will never draw attention to their own entertainment counterparts, what I call predictive programming proxies. They just don't acknowledge these things. For example, Musk is not going to talk about how he is the main character or the main villain in the madness who gets shot. Laura Loomer, I drew her attention to, hey, you've been characterizing this character, Laura Jennings, the crazy conspiracy theorist who's going to expose the election fraud and gets killed for it in the madness. No, she blocks me on messages. I'm just pointing out that if you're in the PSYOP entertainment complex, you're not going to expose your own parallels, your own corresponding characters, just as the directors never say, hey, look, my movie predicted this, this, and that. I mean, rarely. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, it was prescient. They might smirk, like the guy who wrote Leave the World Behind smirked when someone said, your book really predicted 2020, right? But they don't acknowledge it because, of course, that would give away the game. Till says, Trump in the gold suit. Yep, exactly. Beetlejuice. So if you've seen Beetlejuice, and I watched it in the theater, so Beetlejuice came out at the same time as Joker 2, Smile 2, and about the time of the second Shooter. And these things were all strongly correlated. And what happened was the Beetlejuice movie, there's this line in the netherworld. So one of the protagonists is dead, and she's standing in line, acting like a Karen because she doesn't want to wait. And right behind her, you've got Donald Trump in the, dead, presumably, in a gold suit, even an American flag lapel pin. So if the hair, if the suit, if the face didn't seal it that was Trump, the flag certainly did. And the timing of it was just uncanny. And I sent a screen cap of it to Tim Burton. And I'm like, hey, what's up with this? It looks like you guys predicted the Trump assassination attempt and the second one too. And I was hit with the copyright strike on that particular tweet for taking a screen cap, trying to get Tim Burton to acknowledge that he was prescient. Like, wouldn't you want to know that your work is prescient? Hey, look, you're so in touch with the zeitgeist that you're somewhat a prophet. No, they don't ever get ahead of this stuff. For the same reason that the climate change people never take credit for the fact that the ocean levels never swallowed up Florida. No, they're not giving away the game. Now, I mentioned this Beetlejuice. At the time, Beetlejuice, I was noting how he wears the black and white striped suit, and it reminds me of this Hopi Kachina character, this Kachina doll, this Joker, this archetype of the Joker, the divine trickster. And then he's got the green hair. So I'm like, wait, Beetlejuice, sequel. At the same time, Joker 2 was out, another sequel, green hair. Now, if you remember, Joker 2 was being filmed on 4/4/2023, just outside the courthouse when Trump was arrested. And people thought the crowd for the Joker were there for Trump. This happened to be the 44th birthday of Heath Ledger, who had, of course, been replaced. So you have this repeated theme here of the sequel. Now, The Joker 2, Beetlejuice 2, Green Hair, Smile 2, a horror movie at the time. So I was just noticing these pairs. And I look on the news, and then you see this shooter with the yellow and blue hair, which makes green, uh, Ryan Routh, making a second attempt on Trump. So I was just picking up on these parallels between the second shooter theme and the relevant movies. But then, okay, so Joker archetypes is what we're talking about. Beetlejuice, Joker archetype. So the Joker tricksters have been consistently correlated with the shooters. Now, this goes even further because I'm comparing Ryan Routh to this Joker-esque archetype, which he was. He was even laughing when they arrested him. They talked about him laughing in the back of the car. But then go back to Thomas Crook. Thomas Crook, as we talked about last summer, had an uncanny resemblance to the Riddler. And the Riddler sets up his bombs to do the terror attack, and Batman is banging on the glass asking him, "What did you do?" And the Riddler begins singing Ave Maria. Now, 84 days after the shooting, Trump goes back to Butler alongside Elon Musk. And at exactly 6:11 p.m., at the moment of the shooting, they have a moment of silence. And what happens? A male singer comes out and performs Ave Maria, the same song that the Riddler sang. So again, Thomas Crook's physical resemblance, another Joker-esque character. This is a repeated theme that we've been examining. Let me go back to your comments. Rebel Black says, Tim, you have an exclusive story years ago. AI agents were on social media years ago. Disgraced content moderator tried to tell the world years ago. Oh, yes, I remember that. We should. Yes, that was right after the Christchurch shooting, wasn't it? We had a conversation a few years back when Facebook moderators were experiencing deleterious effects of being exposed to all of the stuff people were posting that had to be flagged and censored. And it was like Clockwork Orange for them. And I believe there was some significant lawsuits. Space Chimp says, you can tell it's a psyop because they're flaming both sides. Yeah, that's a great point. I always point out that if it's a bifurcated psyop, meaning both sides agree it happened, but they disagree on the cause and they blame each other, it's fake because reality doesn't work that way. And we've seen this with every psyop this year. It's like, oh, look, a helicopter crash. Right wing's like, oh, DEI, female pilots, or DEI, black pilot with the second helicopter. And the left wing is like, nope, it's because Trump and Musk defunded the FAA and they fired a bunch of air traffic control. And they make the case for both sides. So if you're on the left, you would say, well, if only Musk hadn't if Musk and Trump hadn't made all these cuts, we would have had more than one air traffic controller. So one person wouldn't have had the task of watching both helicopters and airplanes. They would have had one person for the helicopters, and this wouldn't have happened. So if you're on the left, you can be rightfully outraged at Trump and Musk for killing those 67 people. But if you're on the right wing, you can say, oh, you had a female pilot, and it was probably a suicide mission, which is what they're saying now. With the Trump assassination, they said, well, the reason he almost died is because there's a bunch of female Secret Service agents, and they were too short to even shield him. What are they doing out of the kitchen? And I keep seeing these are predictable. Whenever there's an event, if you can predict how each side is going to respond, it's fake. Every mass shooting that you see in a school, left wing is going to say it's gun culture, Second Amendment. Right wing will say, no, it's because the guy was taking SSRIs, antidepressants. There's this old, just, it's almost like a mantra. Whenever there's a shooting, right wing says, not the Second Amendment, it's because of antidepressants. So they see antidepressants as some kind of a plot to take away their guns because antidepressants are causing mass shootings. But the thing is, if one side is saying gun culture and the other side is saying antidepressants and MK Ultra mind controlled assassins, neither side is saying, did it even happen? They both assume the event was real. And it's always like this. What's the third possibility? That it was staged. But if you say that, they say, how dare you? Like truthers, you look at this, the censorship that we have faced, or rather the marginalization, the opposition that we have faced has not come from mainstream. They don't even acknowledge us. They don't even recognize the validity of our position. It's the truthers, the conspiracy theorists are the ones who've been against us this entire time. They would reprimand us. Like, oh, would you say that to the survivors? What about the victims' families? Geez, can't you just wait till after the funeral before you start questioning whether it really happened? Like they used to try to shame us. And that's why I said, let's just appropriate the term auto hoaxer, because they're trying to use it to badmouth us. Like, oh, you just say everything's a hoax, which we don't. But I was like, let's just appropriate that, because this is the most accurate as far as how we approach media. We always get better information if we suspend judgment. It just works better. It's called logic. Logic is on our side, and we're not going to be guilt tripped into crying for crisis actors. And if you're running around with fake blood on your hands, you do not have the moral high ground. You're actually part of the problem. And I had to, really hammer this point for a couple of years, where we had false flaggers who would defend in debate the premise that somebody died, or that I couldn't prove nobody died. It's like, okay, I could whittle it down from 3,000 to 100 to 5. Okay, could you just leave me one jumper? Can we just have one 9/11 jumper that died, please? Just one. It's like, no, I won't even give you one drop of blood. Because if there's any hint of fakery, body count goes to 0. Now you have to prove it was an actual crime. You have to prove it. And if the media can't, how are you going to do it? How is the media advocate defending the mainstream perspective going to convince us of something the media cannot? And their entire frame of reference is the screen. We used to call them TV thumpers, like Bible thumpers. Like, oh, it's on the screen, it's real. No, that's not how it works. And that's a really naive and indefensible position in 2025. I don't know if it's more laughable or sad. I mean, we have this obviously intelligent, nice guy, security guard, commenting on the Trump event, but he can't figure it out. He can't think himself out of that box. He's like, okay, well, this was fake, but then how do I explain the shooter? Okay, so they must have decided to find somebody that they could kill. So they found a degenerate. So he invents this idea that the shooter's this degenerate that they had to set up as a patsy that they could kill. And they instructed him, yeah, shoot at the president, but miss. Like, how many ways could that go wrong? That could have gone wrong in so many ways. But that's a terrible fabrication. That's grasping at straws. But that's people are. It's confusion. Joe Santos says, it's not an EMP in The Wizard of Oz. It's the Chicago World's Fair nights, 1893, and Tesla shut off his free energy, so the witch shut it off to beat the elite and killed Smart City. Interesting. Yes, at the end of Wizard of Oz, or the latest one, which is part 1, it ends abruptly. So part 2 is probably next year. A couple of things about it. It was released on 11/3 and then 11/22. 2 very significant dates if you look at the bigger story. But the end of the movie is the witch confronting the Wizard of Oz. And I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to determine if the Wizard of Oz is representative of, it could just be as simple as Trump. There's a subtext in the film, animal rights, but also this idea of, it's almost like Animal Farm, or rather, there is this part in the film about this dehumanization, or rather the taking away of agency from animals, and kind of like a fascist takeover, and the witch won't stand by it. But at the end, she's hovering above the Emerald City, and there's this electrical storm thing she creates, and it blacks it out. And I'm like, that looks like an EMP. And we have been talking about the subject of electromagnetic pulse weapons, specifically in Seattle, which is called the Emerald City because it's green. But, Emerald City, Seattle, electromagnetic pulse, 11/3. That date has a great deal of significance to every one of these psyops. In fact, it's the date that the One World Trade Tower opened. So 13 years after the Twin Towers went down, 11/3/2014, the One World Trade Tower opens. highly significant, 1,776 feet high. If you walk up close to it, looking up, it looks like a pyramid with a capstone. It's an interesting piece of the puzzle because there's a story being told, and these monuments, these buildings, the architecture are all part of it. John Francis says, I'm an ex-Trump worshiper. I'm sick of people stuck in the left-right paradigm. Might as well talk to a wardrobe. Yeah, well, I can understand that. When Trump first emerged on the world stage, I wasn't even paying attention to politics. But I caught an interview of him. He was talking to Anderson Cooper, and he called Anderson Cooper a baby, which I thought was funny. And Trump was a bit bigger at the time, I think, or maybe it was a camera angle, but he made Cooper look like a baby. It was in Trump Tower. And I was like thinking at the time, well, this guy does seem like an outsider, and he is challenging the media. And I had become very aware of media manipulation at the time, but I didn't get that it was uniform. I still thought it was left and right. I didn't break out of that until I noticed, wait a minute here. How are the right-wingers consistently falling for psyops? Why aren't they responsive to those of us who are pointing out that these are fabrications, and they're using these fabrications to steer public opinion? And then it dawned on me, it's a rigged game, because the left wing never calls out right-wing psyops, which at that time were mostly terror attacks, and the right wing never calls out the left-wing psyops, the mass shootings. But they obviously share the same backstage, and this became increasingly clear over time. There's no way Armalite would have paid out $73 million to a bunch of scammers unless they were part of the scam. And that's the only way to explain it. And this is where people get locked up in this box, because they see this event, like this Trump Butler thing that one guy is confused about because he thinks that the shooter really died, the victim died, but Trump's thing was fake. They're never going to see the way out of it until they get out of the left-right paradigm, until they recognize that the Democrat media, the left-wing media, is not against the right-wing media, that they're both colluding against the masses. With the space program thing, some people are willing now, even Joe Rogan, to entertain the idea that NASA faked the moon landing as a propaganda victory against the Russians. No, it's Russia and America and every nation participating in the space program are waging a propaganda war against the masses. It's top down. It's not lateral. Space Chimp says, never forget jet fuel can't melt passports. Yeah, passports are indestructible, whatever they made those out of. I mean, that's one of the things that stood out to me was, okay, this is a contrivance. It's a story. They're just filling in the gaps with props. But passports played a significant role in 9/11, not only in giving us the story succinctly, neatly, right there, right away. We know who did it, so we can point the fingers. But remember, in The Matrix, Neo's passport had a reference to 9/11 and 3/11. One of them was a passport expiration date. That's what the 9/11 was. Okay, let's continue. So someone tweeted this: Catholic or Jew, this should bother you for the same reason. He's an antichrist, reject him. And what they're showing here is that Trump Gaza video, the AI video he shared, where he had turned Gaza into a resort, and he had a gold statue of himself, which looks like the One-Eyed Jack video, Dawn of a New Day. That should have been offensive to some people, I guess. And then Trump as Pope, that should be offensive to some people. But the QAnoners think. So the QAnoners have believed for some time that the deep state had already been taken out, secret war, the white hats, that Trump had already taken out the Pope, and they had some guy in a Pope costume just filling in, and that this is Trump signaling that he is the new Pope. So the word on Q Street, and I do keep up with them, is that Trump is in fact now the Pope. That he is essentially going through the vaults in the Vatican, and they're going to get all the blackmail, and expose everything. Any day now, the Great Awakening's coming. Now, there's been a number of people who said the UK admitted they're chemtrailing us. No, that's not true. That's misinformation. The truth of it is, and I'm not going to be redundant about this because you know my take on it, but they're spreading the meme right now. And right now, Russell Brand, and look, if you believe in chemtrails, you might find this interesting. Russell Brand is now hyping it up. And he says that they're doing something called stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation. Now, I think this is made up, but the chemtrail talk now is stratospheric aerosol injection. Sounds scary enough, but now it's stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation, or Satan.
Are using geoengineering tech called Satan, an acronym for stratospheric aerosol transport nucleation. Like, look, if you are a globalist and you're trying to defy the general view that you might be an evil force, organized, planned evil intelligence, do not call your sunlight blocking out technology Satan. Stratospheric aerosol.
Okay, so they're going to use Satan to block the sun. This, by the way, this block the sun talk, this geoengineering phobia, I just cracked the code on this. It's been around for 25, 30 years, this geoengineering phobia. I've had to really hone in on what's the underlying structure to the argument here. And it's a mirror of anti-vax. So hear me out. You have the big hoax, and instead of calling it fake, they fight over the solution. For example, man altering the climate. Is it happening? Yes or no? Well, if you reject the premise, then you're like, well, climate change isn't real, and geoengineering, manipulation of the weather, isn't real because we have no evidence of it. But what happens instead now is the standard belief is that climate change is real. The conspiracy theorists will say, no, it's not, but geoengineering is. So they have managed to get the climate change non-believers to believe in climate change by branding it as geoengineering or weather manipulation. It's a buzzword that they attached to this same exact phenomenon, just a different interpretation, but they both agree that it is happening. So that's one level of it. But then the second part of it is this, and this is where it compares to the anti-vax attitude. You have the pandemic premise. If you don't believe that there's even a pandemic, then of course, the anti-vax movement seems kind of silly. You're like, well, okay, I kind of see them because the anti-vax movement in general believes in the pandemic, but they believe that it was man-caused. So the anti-vaxxers in general are not in complete denial. They're not saying there is no virus. They're saying there is one, but it was government made, or Bill Gates made it, or is made in a laboratory. So you have this repeated dialectic where they both agree on this thing, but the right wing rejects the cure. And here's where it connects to geoengineering, because geoengineering, by definition, is actually the cure for climate change. It was never weather manipulation. That's just a misused term. But no, geoengineering are hypothetical solutions to climate change. So if climate change gets really bad, what are we going to do about it? We're going to geoengineer and stop it. So the anti-geoengineering people are against the cure for climate change. And it's the same way that anti-vaxxers are against the cure for the pandemic. So you have both sides in the anti-position. I mean, in both these scenarios, they're in the anti-position. And the anti-position presumes the thing is real. That's why I maintain anti-anti. Be anti-pro. You can be anti the mainstream view, but you also have to reject the opposite position, because the opposite position still accepts the premise. So Russell Brand here is talking about geoengineering called Satan. Now he's talking about what? The government manipulating the climate. What does Greta talk about? The private sector manipulating the climate. So they both agree the climate's being manipulated, but they disagree on the cause and they blame each other. He represents the private sector because he's leaning right. But again, it's another one of these bifurcated psyops. And the truth of it is, they're debating over something that may not even exist. And they debate about it endlessly. And we see it promoted by somebody at his level. I mean, this guy is talking about, he's like, oh, it's Satan. He's a Christian now. Explain to me the 33 tattoo on his wrist. How does that comport with his Christianity? Was it a shout out to Jesus and the age at which Jesus supposedly died? I don't think so. Okay, moving on. Johnny Midnight says, I was thinking about this. What are the odds that the two people who both tried to assassinate Donald Trump appear in Black Rock commercials? Now, this is true. Both shooters, Black Rock commercials. So how do you explain this? Well, they'll say, oh, it's because George Soros owns BlackRock, World Economic Forum. They'll globalists. This becomes a way to point at the left or the deep state. So the deep state brought out its assassins. That's their takeaway. So they're kind of half right. What we are seeing, though, is that there are individuals who are in a circle of people who are in this. It's like that movie Utopia, where the crisis actors live on their own island. But he's a club. And we see this a bit. Recycled crisis actors. Well, it's a small circle of people. It's kind of like insulated, like Hollywood. The Government Actors Guild. All right, moving on. This is from Open Minded Approach. I would say that this Lady Gaga concert was the biggest ritual performance ever, with 2.1 million people in attendance. And if you're not familiar with this, Lady Gaga is down in Brazil. She did some concert right in time for Beltane, May Day, the high point on the pagan calendar. And she has in her symbolism, and I actually have a book I was looking over last night on this subject about ritual magic and how there's different ways that they do this stuff, magic, ritual, etc. And part of it is identifying with the gods that they're invoking, reenacting aspects of their lives or their myths. So when you see these celebrities in these, doing these performance art pieces on stage, yeah, it all fits in the definition of ritual. And here she is performing in front of 2.1 million people. But her new album is called Mayhem. And I watched her Saturday Night Live performance. One of the songs is Abracadabra. Now, that word, as he describes here, and it was a free concert, by the way. And it's so like a religious thing, free Lady Gaga concert. The word abracadabra means, it's an Aramaic phrase, translates to I create as I speak, or I create with my words. And I find this to be intriguing because we're always talking about spellcraft and media and memes and how our worldviews are shaped with these stories, essentially, myths, and the myth makers and media replacing the myth makers of religion. And in the context of magic, the words are treated as more than just sounds and utterances for human communication, but these are speaking to the universe itself, which is responsive to our words, which is why the initiates are also often shown with their finger over their mouth, the sign of silence, because one of the first things they're taught is to STFU, to be quiet and measure their words and recognize the impact words have. So that word has great significance, such significance that in their Bible, the OTO, Order Templar Orientis, the Thelemic groups, their Bible is this channeled book Aleister Crowley wrote called Book of the Law. And the book is called Book 418. It's like their code. And the code 418 has a couple of meanings. One, the great work, which is how they describe their work of transitioning us into the new age. And second, it is the numerical equivalent to the word abracadabra, which they say is the, quote, word of the new aeon. So the word of the new aeon is abracadabra. So I looked into the album to see, okay, well, what else is in here? If, just as far as, is there anything else that would reflect this thelemic aesthetic, symbolism, iconography? And I found quite a bit. References to the lady in red, the Scarlet Woman, that kind of thing. I'll have to do a deep dive, but we've talked about the various Super Bowl rituals and big performances with various musicians and how they all seem to draw from the same body of symbols. It's syncretized, but it's consistent. So I would just point to this as this was a Beltane connected ritual. And the theory behind magical ritual is that the person, the celebrant, the priestess, is, they call it drawing down the moon. She becomes the goddess. Look at the Pope, for example, or Donald Trump is in the Pope costume, the Vicar of Christ. Well, what is this? This represents the embodiment of the sun. This is the sun in the flesh. So in the same way that the Pope is the sun in the flesh, the Vicar of Christ, the Lady Gaga, the celebrant, the pop star singer, you could argue, depending on the ceremony, would be the avatar or the embodiment of the moon or Venus, depending on which aspect of the goddess that they are calling in. Rihanna, for example, we talked about the Super Bowl thing, the whole Super Bowl halftime show, and she's there in red, and you look, she's got the moon bump. Then you've got the follow-up one, Alicia Keys in red. So the goddess in red is a very thelemic thing. Let me go through some comments. Dr. Back afterwards. I understand the premise of Vax, but I think it's a corrupt industry. Sure. I just don't have, look, you can be a non-vaxxer. It's none of my business. You can be a pro-vaxxer. I don't care. I mean, I've been vaxxed plenty of times. I was in the military. I'm inoculated against, what is it? Anthrax or something. But to be an anti-vaxxer is to step in the same box as a bunch of brainwashed, partisan hysterics, and it puts you in a set of belief clusters. Every anti-vaxxer who signs on to that is now in a box with people who are Nick Fuentes friendly, closed borders, and these might be issues that you identify with. But I'm not in that war. I'm not participating. I can see the game. I can see the boxes. And so I'm not going to check a box that lumps me in with a bunch of brainwashed, useful stooges, propaganda mules. No, I'm not going to hang with the propaganda mules. I'm not going to validate their opinion because their opinion's manufactured and it's reactionary and it's not based on evidence. It's based on fear. So no, I'm actually not giving them any credit for even having a point. Anti-vaxxers have as much credibility with me as pro-vaxxers. It's the same club, to be honest. And it's the same, I would say that the flat earther is the same as the globe earther in the sense that they have models that they swear on that they cannot possibly validate, premature models. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying not to lump myself in with people who are locking themselves into something that might actually blinker their perspectives. Ollie Goering says, Lady Gaga is looking more and more suspect as she gets older. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think that was all a hoax. The whole every celebrity is the opposite thing. That's got to be gaslighting. In fact, I would argue it's gaslighting and it's cognitive sabotage against truthers. I don't know. It just seems too contrived. Although Candace Owens did this documentary thing on the wife of the French president, and whatever you think about that, because I don't know what to think about it, there is a scandal there. If you just look at the age, the power disparity, what is a 40-year-old teacher falling in love with a student? It's just insane. But as far as these, no, I don't think Donald Trump's a woman. And there are people who try to convince me of this. I'm like, okay, well, when did he give birth? When did he have time? When did Donald Trump have time to give birth to Barron? And then who's the dad? Like, I'm sorry, it's overwhelmingly confusing to me. It's way too inconsistent. And if you're going to come out with an extraordinarily bold claim, you have to bring evidence to support it. Otherwise, we can just take out Hitchens' razor. What's up, Lord Laney? Oh yeah, this is going to be the routine, by the way. I've opened up my mornings. Actually, you can blame the birds. I can't sleep past 6:30 anymore. So I will be here in the mornings. And then evenings is when we're going to do phone calls. So we're doing both. We have to bookend it. Mornings, IPS deprogram, evenings, open phones. Prometheanism, talking about Trump in the Pope costume. This is an act of treason against the United States. I never thought I could be so deeply offended by the same thing as traditional Catholics. MAGA is dead. I condemn Donald Trump in the strongest possible terms. Yeah. Coincidentally, look at this tweet here from Turn Off Your Black Mirrors. I can't, this guy here, he says, I should be harping on this, but I'm baffled by it. I genuinely can't believe that there was a time where people were trying to convince you that male celebrities were female by putting skull and triangle pictures of their faces. Yeah, that was the thing. They would put a skull transparency over a face and a triangle, and they would say, yep, my bias is confirmed. I found it to be useful, though, as far as trying to understand how people arrive at a wrong conclusion and then unpacking it. Like, what logical fallacy led them to this conclusion? I think it's useful. Find somebody who's going down some rabbit trail. You know they're wrong, but follow them to the end of it and see where they went wrong. It's not enough to just call somebody's take on something off and wrong, but you have to be able to deconstruct it. You have to know the other side. And that's where we are correct here. Mainstreamers are too dismissive of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theorists are rightfully dismissive of the mainstream, but they're not critical enough of their own position. And I think what we're doing here is really outside of the box, and we have to remain detached. Like, I'm not offended by any of this stuff. Look how many people are offended. The New York State Catholic Conference. There's nothing clever or funny about this image, Mr. President. We just buried our beloved Pope Francis, and the cardinals are about to enter a solemn conclave to elect a new successor to St. Peter. Do not mock us. Now, one of Trump's lackeys, Jack Posobiec, who's a Catholic, has no problem with this. It's very selective. So I guess it depends on your politics. And I'm very critical of religious mind control and false miracles. You know, one of the miracles is the idea that if you're not corrupt, your body doesn't rot. Did you know that? Like, if you're a good person and you've never done anything bad, your body shouldn't rot. At least that's the case with a couple of saints. Saint Bernadette, for example, incorruptible. They dug her up. You can find pictures. I've actually been to a shrine, and they said, well, no, she was so pure that she didn't rot. But when you look at the displays and these pictures from like the 50s, they have like a mask over her. It's like a death mask and wooden hands. I'm like, okay, this is just grotesque. But anyway, I'm saying, has anybody check on the Pope? How's he holding up? Was he corrupt? Now, this is an embarrassment, by the way. The UFO cult needs just to recognize, look, ufology doesn't exist. It's a superstition. So we talked about this UFO guy. His name is Louis Elizondo. And he's been sharing this thing that they're claiming to be a photograph from an airplane, when it was, in fact, I guess it was a satellite image that was screenshotted. But the controversy is simply that they misrepresented a circle on the ground from some irrigation system as a UFO. And now he's doubling down on it, claiming he didn't know, even though he went to Congress with it and he's brought false evidence before. But it gets even worse, because now someone has found evidence that they actually added noise and skewed the image. So the only way that he was fooled by this optical illusion, or he could have been fooled by it, is because they added some noise to the image. So now we have an actual lie, a complete fabrication, and it somehow gets to Congress. Space Chimp says, my question is, how does the AI Pope Trump not have a third hand? Yeah, I saw that third hand thing. I don't know if that was an official Vatican video, if that was something somebody made. Lean Dion says, some of the old first wives are extremely manly looking. Yeah, I think that might be, there could be a number of factors explaining a lot of these things. But I mean, look, Jackie Kennedy, I mean, come on, people said that, like John Kennedy. It's just very confusing because you have one group of conspiracy theorists on Q Street who think JFK is actually literally the second coming of Jesus and that he's still alive and that he survived his head wound and he's going to come out and show us someday and we're all going to be amazed. So they have that group. And then you have another group who say, no, JFK is a woman. Another group say that JFK Jr. is wearing a Donald Trump suit. It's like, how many years? I mean, you're going to wear that suit for 10 years? And one of my criticisms of alt media is the lack of consistency and coherence. At least the mainstreamers are marching lockstep. You go to Trutherville, and it's just a bunch of, it's like an asylum. It's like driving here. It's like driving to the war zone, just like The Walking Dead. Like there's no coherence. Nobody's marching in step. Everybody's in their own subjective, solipsistic universe. And it's encouraged. And the deeper they think about stuff, the more they arrive at the erroneous conclusion that they're in a simulation. Joe Rogan points to this. Oh, look, there's no way this could be real. We're in a simulation. Think about that. Look how many times that truthers have been told that the reason why things don't add up is because reality's fake. Occam's razor. What's more likely? The media's fake or reality's fake? If you're incredulous that all media is faked and bent and warped, but you're willing to accept that reality's fake, I would say that you're skewed. Your perspective is a little skewed. That it's far more likely that the media is being screwed with and it screws with your mind than that reality is screwed and warped and that the media is reporting it accurately. No, reality exists. It's objective. It's predictable. It's testable. It's reliable. Media is not. But if you filter your experience through media, yeah, you might arrive at the conclusion that everything is bent. Colin Wright wrote here, the woke right is mirroring the woke left in their tendency to glorify and martyr immoral degenerates solely based on racial identity. Yes. And this woke right concept, though, again, I'm bringing this up because I've been talking about the woke right and right-wing wokeism for some time, but now it's a regular talking point. And it's interesting to see, like, well, how can you say you're not woke right? Because if you're on the right and you are in any of these, quote, anti-positions, you're by default woke, alt-woke. I have this concept of belief clusters that I've been writing about. I'll be putting it in some of my blogs soon. Inescapable belief clusters. There are some beliefs that you can't just adopt without adopting a lot of what is attached to it. And this is an important concept because it's how they trick people. You can get good people to accept a lot of bad things and bad solutions by getting them to align with you based on one particular issue or one belief. But these things cannot be separated. And it's the same thing also with, I mentioned earlier, with the box. If you take one stance, who does that put you in alignment with? And do you want to be on their team? Paradoxy Moronic says, somebody asked me if the Pope was actually the actor Jonathan Pryce. They look similar, but I don't know. Okay, I've heard this many times. I'll have to look, but okay, so it's possible that Jonathan Pryce, if he's played any roles relevant to it, might be what we would call a predictive programming proxy. Because he's 11 years younger, Jonathan Pryce, but there is a resemblance. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the same person at all, Especially one way you can debunk these things is look at younger pictures. For example, I looked at Matt Gaetz. So like, there's no way this guy's real. This is some hideous mask that Tom Cruise is wearing. Well, then you just look at Matt Gaetz 20 years ago. Like, okay, he exists. Like, did they just come out of nowhere? And there's no way. I mean, Jonathan Pryce is a great actor, and he could play the Pope. It wouldn't be hard to play. Just kind of a suit and a robe and just sit there. But no, the burden of proof is on the person making the extreme claim. Listen to this. No one realized that the person meeting with J.D. Vance wasn't Francis. It was Jonathan Pryce playing Francis. A lot of people have said that. Fascinating. Okay, he was in a movie alongside Anthony Hopkins called The Two Popes, and he played Pope Francis in a film. Okay, this has been talked about quite a bit. The Pope as a younger man looks like Jonathan Pryce. Fascinating. But no, the Pope existed. Now, did he? I mean, I'm not even convinced he's dead. I'm not. Look, I suspend. I'm not even mourning him yet. And I still think that if there is a Pope, if we are to consider there to be a Pope today, it's actually Elon Musk who's in that role, as prophesied in Werner von Braun's Mars: A Technical Tale, about the Elon who would colonize Mars, save mankind, and would organize Mars with a governmental structure analogous to that in Rome, making him a pope, the Pope Elon. But I'm not convinced that he's gone because of the date. I mean, Easter, give me a break. Either he died early, he died sooner, and the J.D. Vance thing was fake, and they just announced the date on Easter to make it more holy. You know, it's just a simple miracle. Or perhaps he's still alive. And I still think that that Klaus Schwab could just fill in. And Klaus Schwab and him, the pairing is intriguing. I have a PSYOP card I made with them. We'll have to release it. Because you have Klaus Schwab, you know, the bald head and the black robes, and they got the Pope in white. It's a fascinating pairing. And the fact that they're both 88, stepping down the same day. The number 88 heavily associated with twins throughout these various movies and symbolism in movies. It's more than a coincidence that they exit the world stage the same day, given their comparable roles. So I'm willing to say here that Pope Francis is not dead. Or that death was staged and he's already dead. Rebel Black says, Tim, why are they getting rid of physical media? Any thoughts? When you say getting rid of, I mean, a lot of things are changing. It's incredible just to look at how some simple special effect that might have taken a studio months to complete and millions of dollars can be done by anybody. Now everybody can use this tech. This is a significant democratization of the tools of production. This is a leveling of the playing field. And it certainly looks like a lot of people are just flooding the zone with a lot of generic stuff. Sure. But that's not a bad thing, where these tools are being tested, improved. They're going through iterations. The more we use them, the better they're going to get. I think this is a step up, but it's also very, kind of daunting. It's like, well, do I still need to make original art? Nobody's buying it anyway, but my AI art is actually selling. So am I a sellout if I just quit doing regular art and starving for it when the market doesn't want it? No, I don't think so. In fact, I've been taking my paintings and improving them with AI, turning them into digital prints. And I might just never sell original again. But as far as getting rid of, I'm not really sure if that's the case. It seems like everything's persistent. You can't get rid of anything. Everything can be replicated. Everything can, I mean, it's actually right now, it's a golden opportunity before everything is scrubbed, because I don't know how far back they can. I mean, it's like, can they really hide stuff with Wayback Machine? Are they getting rid of things? Are they memory holing important facts? But we have an opportunity now to use tools like Perplexity AI to go through all these old news stories and aggregate all the relevant facts and document stuff. That's why I have the Auto Hoax Wiki. Going through your comments. Lean Dion says, human vibration and Rambo glow. Very casual miracle. Move on. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people on X, a lot of influencers who are seemingly well-intentioned and probably are, but they seem to be stuck on certain narratives, what I call guardrails. And this is the ultimate test, because I don't outright assert this person is an agent or a shill. Well, I mean, but the existence of influence agents is not even debatable. There are plants, there are agents. This is a fact, and we have direct interactions with these types. I mean, deep inside the rabbit hole, Dearth, David Weiss. Look at these various individuals who are in these various scenes and how far back they go. False 9/11 witness. Look, Dearth got on my radar when he claimed he saw planes hitting the Twin Towers. Like, okay, you're making a living as a conspiracy theorist, but you're spreading information that supports the mainstream view. And he used to call me. When I first started this channel, this guy used to call me on Skype. And he would say, hey, do not say that there were no planes. Do not say nobody died. I personally know an EMT who was there and had to dodge falling bodies and now has PTSD and has to talk to a shrink every day. He made up this big lie, this imaginary friend who's so traumatized she has to see a psychiatrist every day. He made this up to guilt trip me out of speaking the truth. So there are agents and influencers everywhere, but you'll know they're an agent when they remain intransigent to a position, despite facts that contradict it, despite their intelligence seemingly being beyond being tricked by something, such as fill in the blank false narrative. Lean Dion says, Faco interviewed Rambo and all the psyops amount to simulation in his view. Vibration study, these people never lived. Seems to gaslight. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, these are two common perspectives where they say that we live in a simulation. So because the news is fake, reality's fake. And if that's your take, oh, we live in a simulation, the news reveals it, then you have committed the error of confusing the map with the territory. The map is not the territory. TV is not a window to the world. This is an error in psychoepistemology. And that's what we've corrected. You are not deprogrammed if you still make this fundamental error of thinking that the TV provides objective data. That even if they're reporting, hey, the sky's blue today, they're still lying because of their frame of reference and the edifice of lies upon which they rest. They're still a liar. They're not reliable. Now, if your take on things is that reality is fake, it's a simulation, you have no evidence that we're in a simulation outside of what you saw on TV. What is your evidence that we live in a false reality construct, except for TV? That's like reading a holy book. Like you read some Scientology book and suddenly, I think we live in a simulation, nothing's real. No, you've just had a psychotic break from reality. If you're in denial that objective reality exists, you've had a schizophrenic break. And if you're saying that objective reality does not exist, then I don't care about your opinion on the news. You have no business saying news is fake if reality is fake. It's one or the other. Choose one. Either news is fake or reality is fake. You can only have one. News is fake. Reality is real. Reality is fake. Therefore, everything's fake. If I thought reality was a simulation and nothing was real, why would I care about the nightly news? I would have transcended that. So again, if you're saying we're in a simulation, your opinions are irrelevant. By your own admission, you're admitting that my mind cannot grasp this. My mind cannot parse real from fake. Yeah, okay, you're in the open air asylum with everybody else. Good for you. MSM Plus. Go hit the Q pipe. Go have some Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown while you're at it. And then, of course, saying that these people never lived or that none of it's real. Again, same error. Just because the news is fake doesn't mean reality's fake. And also, saying something's fake without qualifying it is as bad or worse as saying it's real without qualifying it. If you're watching the news and like, oh, it's all real because it's on the news, you're an auto believer. If you're saying, oh, that's all fake because it's mainstream, you're an auto disbeliever. The informed non-belief of the skeptic is qualitatively different and superior to the low information disbelief and the low information belief of the conspiracy theorist and the mainstream news consumer. So I opt for informed disbelief. I know why. I can explain why I don't believe a certain thing, but you're not going to accuse me of being confused or having a schizoid break from reality and denying that objective reality exists. I might be the only objectivist on the internet right now with the podcast. Find me an objectivist with a podcast. I'm waiting. I'll be waiting. Because even the objectivists, the self-identified Ayn Rand fan club, are far from objective because they have accepted the premise of mainstream, which renders you a subjectivist just by accepting real until proven fake, accepting that what they're broadcasting is objective, even if biased by opinion. No, media fakery and special effects, not to mention our warped history, precludes any attempt at arriving at an objective view if your filter is media. The IPS think tank is an objectivist think tank, and those of you who deny reality exists are confused, and that's fine. Admit it. Stand on it. I am confused. Look at me. I can't figure anything out. Well, good for you. Don't claim some kind of intellectual high ground. Don't claim that you have a grasp on truth if your version of truth is the denial that there is any objective truth. And I used to get very annoyed by a certain category of truthers who would say, hey, that's fake. Don't pay attention. That's fake. Don't feed it your louche. I'm like, wait a minute here. That sounds a lot to me like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. If you see something that's fake, it's a crime. It's an illusion. It's a scam. That's where you should be looking. That is your glitch in the matrix. And you have all these people out there in Trutherville who are saying, hey, that's a glitch in the matrix. Pay no mind to it. That sounds like damage control to me. Lean Dion says to say Weinstein never existed is gaslighting. Yeah, exactly. It's nihilistic in a way, but to say that this person doesn't exist is batty. And that's okay. That's another thing too. I'm not in the same box as conspiracy theorists who can make these outlandish claims without standing by it. Look, I won't even sit next to a chemtrail believer. If you believe in chemtrails, like, you're not sitting at my table. And you can say that's mean or cruel, but it's like, no, the person who's lying and spreading fear is the bad one. To say that this person doesn't exist is actually gaslighting by definition, where they're trying to get you to question your sense of reality. Oh, look, Weinstein's not real. Trump's not real. Nothing is real. JFK's not real. I'm in a surreality, and it's a Matrix video game, and there is no truth. Okay, well, you're in an asylum. And I've been in asylums, not as a patient, but as a visitor. I've been in many instances where I can see the distinction between people who have lost touch with objective reality and those who have not. This is why I do not believe in activism. You're not going to organize truthers. It would be the same thing as organizing mental patients and trying to get them to take over the hospital. Like, they don't know what universe they're in. They don't know where they are, when they are, who they are. How are they going to organize and take over a system that's beyond their comprehension? And that's where truthers are. That security guard I opened up with said, yeah, I'm pretty sure the Trump assassination was staged, but they also hired a degenerate patsy who was supposed to shoot at Trump and miss and not kill anybody, but he killed somebody. Like, I'm sorry, but that's confused. I'm not confused. Me calling it staged because of reasons, that's not confusion. Some guy making up a bunch of stuff to explain gaps in a story, yeah, it's because he's in a context where he cannot see the truth. He can't see outside of his box. Deprogrammed, the IPS deprogramming, the whole concept here of the IPS deprogram is simply that it's an active mode of media consumption. If you're a regular news consumer, you're passive. You believe what you're told. If you're alt media, you're still passive. You're just believing what you're told from alternate sources. The only active media consumption, though the only position that could be considered deprogrammed, is the active model. And you're not actively consuming media unless you're suspending judgment, if you're not believing it at face value. And there has to be a gap between getting the information and believing it. If there's not a gap, you're not thinking. If there's not a gap there, you're not processing it, then you're passive. So again, there's a fundamental distinction between what we're doing and conspiracy theorists are doing. And that's why we're not confused. And that's why we're not arriving at the conclusion that we live in a big simulation. Like, look, simulationism is a psyop. I actually said that to myself this morning. I was just trying to, put a bow on it. Simulation theory is a psyop. Mandela effect is a psyop. Simple. These are psyops. It's cognitive sabotage, and it's designed to take away your credibility as a witness against the state religion of mass media. If you have the capacity to see through it and deconstruct it, they want to destroy your credibility. Like, hey guys, got to tell you something. We're all being lied to globally. But also, nothing's real, and Harvey Weinstein never existed. Okay, you suddenly have zero credibility because you can't defend those claims. Okay, so I think we've covered everything for this morning, but there's going to be more to talk about later on tonight. I think there's going to be something big dropping any day now. What's today? Today is the 5th, Cinco de Mayo, Monday. Roseanne Barr has a big announcement for Thursday. I think the O'Keefe Media Project, formerly Project Veritas, has something they're going to drop. They're all in hiding right now. Alex, he's their dead man switch. So I hope you're not hungry, because I'm expecting there to be a huge nothing burger later on this. Yeah, Musk is a simulation. Musk doesn't exist. Look, that's the name for that. I think is it nihilism? Reality denialism? But again, I would challenge these people with Occam's razor. Ask them, what's more likely? The media is fake or reality is fake? Ask them. And if they say both, then they're being disingenuous, because it's one or the other. All right, this is One-Eyed Jack and the Murder Hornets. Gone. By the way, if you haven't seen this video, I'll put a link below so you can bookmark it. Hold on, what can I have? There we go. Okay, I just posted a link below. I want to make sure you all get this. And comment if you haven't yet. Comment on the video. It says One-Eyed Jack and the Shells. We collaborated on this. He asked me to make a video for his latest song. And I used Sora, which is text to video prompting, and a few other things that you might find interesting. And there's the link. Have a good day. See you later.
He's a real bad dog. He's a magic guy. There's no need to ask why. Because you have to hoax them gently. Then you have to hoax them hard. Well, you hoax them like they like it. You make them sniff the glow. He's a hero, the American way.